All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the April meeting of the Ward 8 Neighborhood Planning Assembly. We'll just go around the table with some quick introductions. I'll start with myself. I'm Ryan Nick. I live on King Street. Pronouns are he, him, and I am on the steering committee.
Hi, my name's Emily Piersack, she, her. I live on Pearl Street. I'm here on behalf of Burlington Water Resources to present tonight. I am also a Ward 8 resident.
Yeah, I'm Tom Carroll. I live on South Union between King and Maple. Pronouns would be he and him. And I'm new to this. I've been in Ward 6 for a number of years. So I'm glad to be here and hope that we can build, our cute little group here.
That's the idea.
Yes.
Thanks for coming.
I'm Merrick Broderick. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Ward 8 City Councilor. Thanks everyone for coming.
Hi, my name is Stella Sairfield. I live on Kerrigan Drive, in the dorms at UVM.
The legs are getting me. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm Amy Malinowski. I use she, her pronouns, and I live on South William Street. So, yeah.
Tim, you want to introduce yourself? I believe we have Councilor Doherty.
Hi, I'm Tim Doherty. Can everyone hear me?
Good.
He, him, and I live on Colonial Square.
Thank you, Tim. Sorry.
I was also just going to say, I think my partner is also online, but might be in like a webinar view, although I don't see them. But there they are.
Oh.
So if you want to do
raise their hands so I know. But yeah, you can
Oh,
see
okay.
that, like anyone online wants to talk. Right?
Oh, cool. Are they unmuted now? Can they? If you'd like to introduce yourself, Stephen, you're more than welcome to.
No.
Good.
Well, oh,
Hi, I'm Steven. I also live on South William Street and I use he, him pronouns.
Awesome. Thank you very much. We'll jump right into the public forum. If any of the members of the public have something they'd like to say, might be a good time for the proposal.
So this is, I can pass like a couple of them around. I kind of like three of them. It's a proposal for doing a mailer. We have a budget. The steering committee, I guess, has a budget for, or the NPA in general, each has a budget for community projects. I wanted to propose doing a mailer. It doesn't need to be exactly like this. This is just a general idea of it. I did want to have like a QR code on here as like a way that like probably go to like an email to get involved. But basically, I think sending this out to people in the ward, it might be too late to send it to students because we do leave in like 2 weeks. The vast majority of us do. But we'd have like what is the NPA, how to get involved, maybe like upcoming events in the ward. I think a lot of people don't know what the NPA is right now because it's not, I think the Ward 8 NPA is underutilized. So this is a way that you can kind of present it to people. I think we had a lot of different options for using the budget. I think this is a very easy way to start telling people more about the NPA. But yeah, so.
That's great. Thank you.
Mhm.
Although I guess we can discuss it a little bit. We have some time in the agenda here. I think it's great. And if especially we get this towards the end, but if we include the QR code to the survey,
Yep.
That could be good. And also it would be doable in the time we have left for this fiscal year.
Yeah.
So, which is important.
Yeah, it's funny that you did this because I was going to propose something very similar, that we make up some kind of a card.
Mhm.
Merrick, when you were running, your team was around with these cards and they left them in people's doors and mailboxes and stuff. Something like that, whether it's a mailer or whether it's just going around and dropping them in boxes, I think that would be great because it's true that I think people don't know much about the ward, especially Ward 8. We're kind of now thinking things and reforming.
Yeah.
And the boundary lines have shifted. So do people even know what ward they're in at the moment? So might be useful too to help locate themselves in in this situation, and then tell them to come to the meeting. So no, I think this is a great idea, and this is very attractive.
Mhm.
I love the design.
Thank you.
So whether it's a mailer or whether it's a kind of something we drop off, we can get a team together and do it. So
Yeah, I do think it could not, I think it should be more like this size and have it be stuff on this side and then on the back. I think that having it like this would be a little awkward, but something like Merrick's literature is a really good example. So thank you.
yeah, and the other thing I would just say quickly is that going around the neighborhood, there's an opportunity for personal interaction that can usually mostly be really good. And so that's an opportunity to just talk with people about what's going on and maybe make that personal contact that could draw them into into a meeting or feel comfortable coming to a meeting rather than just walking in and not knowing anybody and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah. I think the only problem that I would have there is that we don't really have capacity to do that. Getting all of the people that we did for distributing Merrick's literature took a lot of time. And we don't have that capacity, I think, as an NPA. So I think that's where it is with we can send out a mailer. It's easy to send out a mailer. I think having one-on-ones with people in the ward is a great idea. I just don't know how we would be able to do that.
Yeah, I think the one-on-one is probably preferable in terms of man-person power, less feasible.
Yeah, and mailing is a great.
Yeah. And yes.
Another idea. I don't know how hard this is, but I imagine that there's some, and I don't know how significant this portion is. So if it's not significant, maybe this is not interesting. But for folks who are coming from Ward 6 to Ward 8, and from people like me coming from Ward 1 to Ward 8, it might be interesting to have a version of it that's welcome to Ward 8.
Mhm.
And if we could specifically target that mailer to go to those folks to really make sure it's triggering for them, now you're part of Ward 8, and have it be more of a warm welcome and kind of thing. Could be interesting.
Yeah.
So that we don't necessarily have to send, if you're doing mailers, you don't need to send the same mailer to everybody. I don't know how hard that would be to figure out, but.
Yeah, I might have to look at what that would entail.
Yeah. It's complicated.
No.
But
don't get me wrong, love where the idea is at.
Yeah. Or if it's also something where maybe if it's only a certain number of streets, maybe those streets we drop something in their door instead of doing the mailer.
Or
if it's
addition.
a small, or in addition. So it could be a multi-approach. I don't know.
So they could all be welcome to Ward 8.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Ward 8 is sort of reviving and renewing itself, so.
Welcome to the new Ward 8.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, there you go.
Welcome to the new Ward 8 NPA.
Yes.
I just want to say, if you are going to do mailers, please look up the USPS guide on how big a postcard is, because if it's too big, then you really run into some issues. And I for sure learned that the hard way. So
It costs more money.
yes. So
Yeah.
Can you repeat that?
yeah, when you're designing a postcard, look into the USPS, how big is a postcard guide,
Mhm.
and make sure you don't exceed their limits, because some things, if they're too big, are non-machinable. And it costs an extra rate and extra labor to push that around,
Mhm.
not going through the machine, and it takes extra time. So definitely go smaller.
That's a really good suggestion. I too have made that mistake and it's a nightmare.
Yes.
And I can't remember what the rules are, but definitely want to get that right.
Yeah, they're pretty strict. Quick budget question for you, Fosca, and if you don't have an answer right now, that's fine. Do we have our full budget available? Did the old Ward 8 NPA spend anything, or are we working with the full 25?
You are working with the full $2,500 for the fiscal year. Fiscal year ends June 30th, and all the reimbursements and POs, at least the POs, need to be created a few weeks before the end of the fiscal year. So the deadline is coming up fast to use up funds. I did confirm recently that each NPA still helps pay for the Zoom subscription for running these meetings hybrid. So that's $20, I believe, for each NPA to pay. So $2,500 minus $20 is, and then the pizza that you got once. But I have those numbers, and yeah, I can send them to you
Okay, so
tomorrow.
we're like 2,400.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
This is later on the agenda, but since you're talking about the budget, one thing I might propose, and we'll talk about this later, is we might consider doing some kind of lottery style reward for completing the survey, which could come from our budget as well. So.
Cool. Does anyone else have any other public comments? Good.
So about the NPA. So. Okay, so I'm Charlie, and so I would recommend that you talk to the other NPAs and start familiarizing yourself with the other NPAs. And because if you go to the city website, you can see how you can contact them. And you might want to, designate somebody to attend via Zoom or something, some of the other NPA meetings, so you can see what they're doing and introduce yourself, because you can actually start working with them like on projects. Like Ward 1 does a lot of projects. I'm not sure, Ward 6 doesn't do so much, but I'm just saying that once you start working with the others, you're going to find that things get a little less confusing or intimidating once you start working with some of the other steering committee members around the city. And then if you're going to distribute something, you might want to put the link to the city website specifically where you are at, so that people can just quickly get to it, sort of thing.
That would be the QR code.
Yeah. And so I don't think you can actually pay someone to flyer the neighborhood. We've never been able to do that in the past, because you can't directly, but you might want to actually explore that and see, because in the past it was federal money and now it's general fund money. So that might have changed. So there might have been rules preventing that in the past, but if it's just general fund money, you might actually be able to pay somebody just a leaflet up and down the street kind of thing. So I would look into that if it was me. So that's the sort of thing. And then just like having a summer barbecue kind of thing, and just having a pizza or two here at your meetings. And but if it was me, I'd be contacting some of the other MPAs, steering committee members, and just saying, what are you guys doing this summer? Are you going to have a meeting in July and August? Because traditionally a lot of the MPAs take July and August off. But you can do whatever you want. You can have 3 NPA meetings a month if you want. You can do whatever you want.
So I have a question. So, I live right down the street from where the Ward MPA, Ward 6 people meet now. And I've been to a couple of their meetings since the change. And, I'm thinking of just continuing to do that. And I'm wondering whether to contact them and maybe even get on the agenda and talk about what we're doing or trying to do, and introduce myself, or if I were to be the person to do that. Would you say that kind of formality, or just chatting, like emailing and chatting with people at a distance?
Again, you can go to their request site, so you can request to get on an agenda, or you can also just use that to just introduce yourself to some of the other wards, and you can attend the other ward meetings via Zoom or something like that. And I think you're going to find that most of the steering committee members are very friendly, and they really want to work with other, because 10 years ago, almost all the steering committee members in the city knew each other, because we had real consistent all ward meetings. And so like all the wards would get together and they would sponsor an event, like at Contoy's Auditorium or something, you see, or like an election thing. Like the MPAs could get together and invite all the candidates to the Vermont Senate from this area at Contoy's or at Davis or something. You can see, once you start, things get a little easier once you start working with some of the other steering committee members, because they have more ideas for you and et cetera. So
yeah, it's great. Yeah. Sounds good. I mean, I'm probably going to go to the next Ward 6 meeting anyway. So if we all agree, I could see if I can get on the agenda and even make a pitch or just, introduce myself and open a discussion with them. Ward 6 seems like a natural because, I was in Ward 6 until months ago and now I'm in Ward 8. I haven't moved, but, so they're right adjacent to me.
And even if you can't get on the agenda, public forum.
Yes, yeah.
So the other thing is,
Their
so
meeting's next week.
Their meeting's next week.
Yeah, their meeting is next week, so I'm guessing they likely have their agenda mostly put together by now, but public forum for sure, I think.
Sure. And Greg Epler Wood is, I think, the lead, one of the committee members there. I could just check in with him.
Yes, send an email.
Yeah. But you're not suggesting that it's just the adjacent wards who should do this. We should reach out to all of the wards.
yeah, there's no reason not to. The other thing is that, so Ward 6 meets at Champlain College. And so Champlain College keeps that room free on Thursdays at that time of day. So if you guys wanted to have your, see, they have a little bit of parking there. They're a little bit out of your way, but so you might want to consider having your meetings there.
It's a great space too. It's smaller than this, actually.
Yeah. I actually have another space that see, they're overflowing that room. And so there's another space that they've already made arrangements with Champlain College to move into another space.
Oh, that's great.
So I'm just saying, you guys could just piggyback because that wherever they are is going to be available each Thursday.
And it works for you.
See, and again.
Yeah.
So see, it's actually very difficult for me to get into the building here. And to get into the room here. So I'd be very happy to.
Sure, and plus it's
Go to
just there's parking and.
They have much more parking at Champlain College than near here, so.
It sounds good.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's great.
Yeah.
Great suggestion.
Brian, do you mind if I say something?
Please.
I was just gonna say, after your last meeting, I did talk to, I think the operations manager or something like that. I forget his title, but Nick, who works at Champlain College, and he's the reason that they are able to use that space for free is because of a relationship that he has with the steering committee or some of its members. And I, kind of broached the idea. I don't know that it would be a possibility necessarily because that's a pre-established relationship. He's doing extra hours. He has to be there when this room is being used for free. So I think it's a great idea. And I think there's other things to think about too, so it might not be feasible. But just wanted to mention that.
All right. Public comment. Good. All right. Next item on the agenda is the steering committee new members. I know we have at least one interested person in becoming a steering committee member. Tom, you are also welcome to nominate yourself if you're so inclined. As our new liaison to Ward 6, or Ward 6 ambassador over here. But I guess I'm not sure if you can nominate yourselves. You can have someone else nominate you.
I'll nominate Stella Sairfield for the steering committee. Stella was an integral part of my campaign and excelled especially in recruitment and retention of people on the campaign. And I think that's going to translate really well to establishing our NPA and growing it as a whole.
A second, I guess, just for
A second.
wonderful. So would you like to say anything or should we just take a vote? You don't have to, but
I'm really happy to live in Burlington and I'm excited to be more involved.
wonderful. All those in favor, I think we can do it by voice vote. Aye. Aye. And I'm assuming none opposed. So Stella, congratulations. Welcome to the steering committee. Any other interested parties, nominations, self-nominations? We can also do this at the next meeting too. So.
Well, I'd be happy to serve on the steering committee.
Wonderful.
But No one here knows me, you know?
You engaged so a second.
Yeah. I'm sure we'd be happy to have you if you would like to serve. You should.
Okay. Any objections to this?
I think a second would be nice.
Second.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. I'm also assuming people online will speak up if they have any specific objections, but not expecting any. So congratulations, Tom. Welcome.
Thank
We'll add you to the group chat.
Yes.
Wonderful. For our next item on the agenda, I don't see the representative from the police department. And so I think we will skip ahead. We are now back ahead of schedule to the water department.
Thanks. My presentation is on that laptop over there. So in the meantime, there are some flyers if you are interested in learning more about your water service line inventory. And here's the presentation. So thank you very much. I'm going to start out first with just a quick background on general awareness of lead in the drinking water in the national discourse, and then kind of shift to how Burlington is responding to that as a general issue, and then more about this project. So if you don't mind, the next slide, please. So back in the early 1980s, there was a lot of national awareness growing around the health impacts of lead in drinking water, and a lot of people kind of coming to the terms with the fact that it's really not good for you. So in 1986, the Safe Drinking Water Act was amended to ban the future installation of lead pipes in drinking water systems. That amendment did not require utilities to retroactively remove any existing lead pipes. In 1991, the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, establishes the lead and copper rule, which was aimed to reduce lead and copper exposure in the drinking water. This rule establishes maximum contaminant levels for lead and copper in the drinking water, and it requires water systems to implement treatment techniques if more than 10% of the samples they take exceed those maximum levels for lead and copper. So then how was Burlington responding to that? Back in 1982, we began sampling the drinking water for lead, copper, iron, zinc, and cadmium following the EPA procedures. Part of why this is so important is that the water that we get from Lake Champlain is naturally corrosive to internal plumbing. It has a neutral pH and a low amount of dissolved minerals. So kind of that combination of things allows it to more easily leach hazardous metals out of pipes. Back in 1982, 6 of the sites that were sampled immediately at the tap, so they turned the water on instantly and collected that sample right away, had elevated lead levels. In 1984, Burlington started using sodium hydroxide to prevent corrosion in the pipes to combat that corrosive factor of Lake Champlain's water in the pipes. So they did that for about 6 years, and then in 1990, they upgraded to using zinc orthophosphate, which we still use today to prevent corrosion in your pipes. And how that works is it kind of lines the interior of your pipe with a protective coating so that the water and the metal don't really interact and metals don't leach into your water. So since 1990, since we started using zinc orthophosphate, we have been in compliance with all of the maximum levels set in the lead and copper rule for lead and copper. And every 3 years, we test in 30 high priority locations. So those are homes that were built just prior to the ban on lead pipes or lead in your solder. So in 2021, the EPA revised that lead and copper rule. A lot of that was following the conversation around Flint, Michigan, and issues with lead in the drinking water nationally. The revised rule mandates now that every single water service provider removes significant sources of lead from all water systems in the US, which is great because the previous rule, like I said, did not require removal of lead sources. So as part of this revision, every single water utility, including Burlington Water Resources, has to submit a comprehensive water service line inventory by October 16th, 2024, which is in just a few months. So as part of that, what we have to do is identify every single lead pipe and every single galvanized pipe that requires replacement, and which is a very specific term in the rule saying it's a galvanized pipe that was ever downstream of a lead pipe, because galvanized pipes can sort of harbor that lead. And so if you remove the lead part but keep the galvanized part, you're still harboring lead and it's still an issue. Luckily for Burlington, we have not encountered any lead pipes, so we are doing well. By the same deadline, we also have to create a plan for lead and galvanized requiring replacement removal, which we will submit the plan. We will likely not act on the plan since we don't have any to remove. An important note, though, is I was looking at the annual reports from the city back in before. Can you go back a slide real quick?
Sorry.
That's okay. From 1929 to 1937, they list the types of materials that were used in the water distribution system. And one of those materials that they listed for a few years was lead. After 1937, there's completely no mention of lead at all being used anymore. And all of the records that we've looked at and all of the pipes that we've dug up have not been lead pipes, which is great. So that's that last bullet. We have no records or evidence of active lead service lines today. Not ready. Thanks. And I'm just now noticing an extra 9 on the slide. So as of today, we estimate that we have about 11,009 total service lines, which is where that 9 went. We've looked at the records for and identified the materials of 7,238 service lines in the city. We've looked at the records for another 2,075, and we still don't know the materials. We have a record that says that they installed a service line and the date and the size, but it doesn't say the material. So part of that is we are going to ask customers to identify their service lines. And that leaves us with about 1,700 service lines that are yet to be reviewed. A lot of them are up on UVM's campus. That's kind of the big bad that we're saving for last. So the strategy is to review all the records and then identify the unknowns that remain, ask customers to help us identify them, and perform in-person inspections. So back in November 2023 is probably the first you would have heard of this project from us. We were doing posts on Front Porch Forum. We started the records review back then as well, or maybe a little bit before, and we're finishing that up realistically next month. And then from there, we're going to contact the priority properties who still have unknown materials, people who live in older neighborhoods where there is a remote possibility that they may have lead. Again, incredibly unlikely, and we do not believe that to be the case. Throughout this process, we're going to compile responses, look for the missing information, follow up directly outreach to those homeowners or the residents of those homes. Something important to note, we will at some point be providing further public outreach. We will be going door to door and knocking on people's doors and asking for access to their homes. So if you see somebody very clearly marked with Burlington Water Resources asking for entry to your home, you're more than welcome to call our customer care and say, hey, is this person a legitimate person? And just know to expect them. So putting that out there. And then in October, we have to submit the inventory. And then by November 16th, we have to publicly share the inventory. We plan to have a map so that you can look up your address and see what you have if you don't already know, and then introduce next phases as needed. So just like a brief recap of the communications. If you receive a water bill, your landlord, if you have a landlord, may receive your water bill for you. You get the On Tap newsletter. If you're familiar with that, it's just like kind of a quarterly little what's what in water resources, things to know, interesting things. We've also mailed postcards to every single address within Burlington. We've been on social media with Front Porch Forum, and I think the city has a Facebook page. Throughout all of that outreach, you'll have seen a survey form. There's a survey how-to and frequently asked questions. We have a website with all of those forms available in multiple languages. So if you know somebody or if you are someone yourself who does not primarily speak English as a first language, you may be able to access this material in your preferred language. We've also partnered with other city programs like the Burlington Lead Program, the Fire Marshal, Code Review, and CEDO to get those translations, just to kind of work together so everybody's on the same page. We are working with landlords, UVM, the UVM Medical Center, Champlain College, and schools to get information on some of the more key buildings. And as always, the customer care team is available for any and all questions that you have. This is just a fun stats. I pulled the results of our survey. We've had 983 people respond to the survey, which I think is pretty great. Some tragically low numbers for Ward 8, though, which I understand. We have a lot of students living in dorms, and it's difficult to access the utility room in a dorm. Please don't try. Most of it's copper, which is great. That's a very nice service line to have. Some of it's galvanized. Galvanized service lines can cause issues with low water pressure, which is not in and of itself bad for your health. It's just kind of annoying when you want to take a shower. So galvanized, not that bad. Some plastic lines, those are in newer homes, and ductile iron, which is primarily from people's fire services where they have a fire service coming in and then they tap their water off of that. And from the pictures that we've received, there are still 30 unknown. Sometimes the fittings are so close to the floor that you can't see the service line, and sometimes it's not a great photo. So we still have 30 unknowns to track down, but 983 survey responses I'm feeling pretty good about. But Ward 8, we can do better. I live here, we can do better. You got to represent well.
Do these reflect the new board boundaries?
Yes, they do. So with that, I will accept any questions. My preference is for questions about the service line inventory, but I do work for Burlington Water Resources and know a little bit about the rest of that. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions here?
Oh, I forgot the most important part. If you submit a survey, you automatically get entered to win a $50 gift card to a Burlington-based business or a Burlington business. So submit the inventory. You might win a gift card.
Yeah, I think I got a card in the mail. You know, I've had our condo association, they put it in my mailbox. And so I went down and with a magnet actually to see if the magnet attracted, you know, to the pipes and filled out the survey and sent it in.
Thank you.
Yeah, but I'm thinking, so galvanized pipe, would that be magnetic? Yes. Because I think we had galvanized pipe in the basement there, in the, you know, the input water coming in.
Yeah. If you stick with me, I can pull up your response.
Yeah. It should be in there. Yeah. I'll give you the address.
Great.
It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, thanks.
Any questions online? Good.
Sad question.
If folks live in large rentals, multi-unit buildings, would you suggest people ask their landlords to submit this or go look for them themselves?
So it depends. Some multi-unit buildings have multiple service lines, like condos sometimes will have multiple service lines. Some of them only have one. And if it comes into your unit, please, you're more than welcome to fill out the survey. If it does not come into your unit, I don't expect you to go traipsing through the building looking for the water meter and the service line. So you can reach out to your property manager or whoever else may have that information. And we are working with property managers to try and alleviate the burden on people in multiple unit buildings.
Sweet. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next item on the agenda, the community survey, which we kind of already touched on at the beginning, but we have a wonderful community survey prepared by Amy. And I don't know, Amy, if you want to talk about it at all, but I got a little preview of it's like a Google form kind of thing. Really well put together, like well done. So
Thanks. Yeah, I'm trying to think like if it makes sense to well, maybe I'll just frame it, and then if we want to pull up survey for people to kind of visualize it. So I'm a visual person. So basically the ask was wanting to do some kind of survey to better understand like what we do different and pull more folks in. So I had made sort of two offerings to at-large steering committee and NPA. Is one was just sort of a Google Doc laying out a framework for how to think about the design of the survey and like what we want to learn. And then the second offering being like, here's a prototype of what the survey could be. So just to kind of walk through, you know, so my background is doing like human-centered design and research, or the UX research design, all those words. So that's kind of the framework. I think about it less as like an academic and more of like, how can we get actionable insights so we can like move and change things? So the learning objectives that I was speculating on, maybe these feel about right, or maybe they feel like we need to add to them or adjust them. But the ones that I was coming up with was wanting to know what kinds of programming / atmosphere, etc., feel really compelling to people in Ward 8. Second question, what are the biggest barriers to folks participating? third question, this was brought up in our last meeting, but doing a pulse check about how people feel about combining with another NPA. In the past, Ward 8 has been combined with Ward 1. And so kind of getting a sense if people have strong feelings about that one way or another. Also, noting that it's a potentially good opportunity to collect people's contact info to add to our nudge newsletter list, I guess, whatever you want to call it. And I was looking around and it seems like generally NPAs tend to have like 5 steering committee members. We now have 3, but it also could be a good opportunity for folks to self-identify that they are potentially interested in some way. So those were kind of the learning objectives. And then I kind of asked myself a question too of like, okay, is there certain like sort of screener questions? So screener being making sure you live in Ward 8, but then also other questions that might help us interpret people's responses to these. So for example, a screener question could be like, I think there's a lot of hypotheses folks have this is specific to Ward 8 around how students, what they might want versus long-term residents. And so specifically asking a question to understand who the person who's filling it out, are they a student? Are they a long-term resident? And then we might find out, maybe they actually have really similar barriers. Maybe they have really similar things they find compelling, or maybe they're really different, and that's okay too. But trying to see how we'd want to break down those responses. So I don't know if there's an easy way to pull up the Google form. Cool. How shall I?
Can I ask an engagement question while we're doing this?
Yeah.
Is there anything going on for Green Up Day? Like, is there a Ward 8 Green Up crew that would get together? Could be like a nice community building.
Yeah. That'd be very nice.
It's like coming up though, so it might be hard.
The turnaround time might
Yeah,
be
that's a quick turnaround.
I love the idea.
But
Referring to the old North End cleanup day.
no, I'm thinking of like Green Up Day
Oh.
and then having a Ward 8 like Green Up group that is separate from, are you talking about Emma's like North End thing?
It's 2 different things.
Yeah. Okay.
I think while we pull this up, we'll have a QR code to this, both to the Ward 8 section of the CETA website and a QR code to the survey on our mailer.
Yeah, I love the idea of having that on the mailer. I think that's a perfect way to kind of, I guess, do this work for who live in the ward and how they want to be involved. I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
So
Well, can I suggest doing both the QR code and the link? 'Cause
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
one's really good for some groups and the other's really good for some other groups.
Yeah, I think I don't think that 2 QR codes is very.
No, I mean like use a
Or,
QR
like,
code
literally
and
the
spell out the URL.
Oh, yeah.
Cause like, I think
Yeah, you can make like
for a few
Bitly or
demographics,
something.
yeah.
Our long-term residents don't have QR codes. Or like it's less used.
Or yeah, maybe just like use them less or are less familiar with them.
Or if they don't have a smartphone.
Or if you don't have a smartphone.
Yeah. But yes, okay, while we're waiting, I can talk about a couple other things. So, one thought would be, not necessary, but we could, do some kind of like lottery style offering if people complete the survey. And just making sure that we, note that when we're advertising it. And I have no real opinions about how much or to where.
I might suggest, because given the timeline, this will probably be the only thing we spend money on this year. We figure out how much it's going to cost to mail these out and then take a round number of what's left over. If it's $51, make it $50 and it's a gift certificate to City Market.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally cool. And you could pull multiple, or?
Yeah, I mean, like we could, do
Depending on how much there is.
225s or, whatever, but something of that nature.
Yeah.
Because also like mailers, well, Merrick, you might be a little more familiar with the budgetary, like how much does it cost to mail the whole ward? Do you know, did you mail the whole ward? I know I got lit in my mailbox.
It was like 400 something, right? You think it's
400 for postage, and yeah, it depends on what's the print. Yeah, I mean, we got a better voter file now to base that off of. Yeah, it's about $400 for postage.
But then the actual print papers is another some number of dollars.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe we will have a decent chunk left over for gift cards.
Well, also, sorry, did you also address printing the mailers? How much?
Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Well, I addressed it in the fact that we don't know how much it will be.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
also, we didn't mail the whole ward. We mailed it to the buildings that we didn't have access to knock.
That's true.
So that a good portion of the ward, because there's a lot of multi-unit rentals, but not all the ward.
Okay.
Oh.
And not the student portions.
Hey, check that out.
Okay. So again, this is just like a sort of a prototype framework. So anything about it could be changed, and I just put it out there, and folks can do what they will. But some kind of something to be like, hey, do you live in Ward 8? We have some questions for you. I think making it easy for people to verify like what an NPA is that links out to the city's website is a good thing. And then also letting folks know that there's some kind of lottery reward. So first thing is like having some kind of screeners to know that people live in Ward 8 for them to check if they live in Ward 8. Some other potential questions that could be interesting in terms of helping us understand the data could be understanding how long someone's been part of Ward 8. I haven't been part of Ward 8 until recently, so that would explain why I haven't been here, right? And same for you. So you would then maybe interpret my answers differently than if someone who's like, I've been here for 5 years, but hasn't been to an NPA meeting. That's interesting. Okay, then going to the next question. I also felt like it would be helpful to get a sense of basically the people who are really excited about NPAs and what is blocking them. And so having some kind of way, a spectrum to understand that, like basically people will have different attitudes about the NPA. Some people might be like, NPA doesn't do anything. It's not powerful. That's why I don't go. But then there might be people who are like, oh, I really deeply believe in NPAs. I love this part of Burlington culture. I just haven't been to one. And it's like, that's the person I want to know, like, why? What's your barriers, right? Because that's somebody who wants to participate and believes in it, but hasn't. And it's also interesting to know if someone doesn't feel like NPAs are like critical or compelling, why is that too? So having some kind of gauge is potentially interesting and helpful. So asking the question of basically how critical and compelling do you believe NPAs are to our local democracy culture? And then the big two questions I would say is trying to get at what do people feel are the biggest barriers to them participating, and having them kind of prioritize and add to the list. So I brainstormed a bunch of different options. Maybe I think we can add more options to the list. Also, if we wanted to use Typeform instead of Google, I believe it also allows you to allow someone to grab and drag them so they can actually rank all of them if we wanted to. There's different options. But also giving an open-ended question. So someone could fill this out and be like, oh yeah, I definitely see something on here that is the biggest barrier for me. Or if it's not, they can address it in other, or there's a qualitative question right below it that's like gives them an opportunity to expound on it. So yeah, if there's things on the barriers list, I think it's totally fine to like add a bunch to those just to get people's brains thinking and asking themselves, is that a barrier for me or not? And then I think the second big question is the opposite of the barriers question, which is like, what would make you feel excited about coming? And obviously to some extent, like NPAs they have a mission and definition. So it's a little bit more, I think, trying to get at some of the more like atmospheric aspects of that maybe. But maybe it's also part of how things are structured. But I I didn't feel like it made as much sense for me to make that a more structured question than the barriers way. I think maybe just leaving something that's more qualitatively open-ended and just see what you get. You know, if people are like, we want to do a community dinner, like wards 2 and 3, or like, we want to have music from, or I don't know. I was trying to throw, again, a bunch of different ideas out there to get people kind of thinking of stuff and then responding. So those are kind of the 2 big questions. And then if you keep scrolling down, the next question is getting at the pulse check. So I said some neighborhoods, such as wards 2 and 3, as well as wards 4 and 7, choose to combine the NPA gatherings. In the past, Ward 8 has combined gatherings with Ward 1. How would you feel about the idea of combining these? And then gives them options. And as like a sort of general survey practice, I think probably this one, yeah, strongly support, somewhat oppose, strongly oppose, never giving a neutral option that's like in the middle, force people to give an opinion or say, I truly have no opinion. I trust others to decide, but like take out the middle one. And then, yeah, if they have other strong thoughts, if someone's like, I want to write a whole diary entry about why we should combine or why we should not combine, like, let's leave it open for people to do that. It might be helpful to understand how people are responding to this, maybe how it's different based off of sort of demographic stuff. So I was thinking maybe age might be sort of interesting. And we might find that there really isn't much difference across age, or maybe there is, I don't know. And then also what best describes you. So I said, I'm a student living on or off campus. I'm a renter, I'm a homeowner, or if your housing situation's in flux or other, however you want to describe yourself. That seems more specific to our ward, that seems to be something that gets brought up a lot, that people have hypotheses about. So let's find out. And then asking people their name and contact info. The reason in terms of like, folks can choose to do what they want, but just as why I put them at that bottom. So in terms of survey design, people are more willing to give their name and their contact info when they already know what the information they have given you. If you ask it at the beginning, they're gonna be like, well, I don't want to give it to you because I don't know what you're going to ask me and if I want it to be anonymous. But if you've already filled it out and you've already been like, oh, actually, I didn't really reveal too much that I care about, then they're more willing to give their name and their email. And then I think there's like 2 more questions. Asking if they're interested. Oh yeah, Mayor, Steering Committee email you with reminders about the date, time, location, upcoming meetings, and that would add them to the list. And then here's what the NPA steering committees are. Would you be interested in serving on the Ward 8 steering committee? I'm very interested and willing. Let's get in touch. I may be interested and willing. Email me more info, or like I'm not interested at all. So yeah, that's kind of the rundown of the questions. So I guess what I would throw out there is one, the learning objectives that I talked about sort of at the beginning. That's totally open for conversation. People are like, those don't seem quite right, or you have different ones. Totally. It's just a framework people can work within. And then I think the second question is like, do the spirit of these sort of questions seem to match in terms of meeting the learning objectives that we want to go after? And then I think there's like a third layer of like, if we want to get into the granularity of like how this question is worded or whatever. I think the granularities, I think what's most important in this moment is to identify if there's big holes in the higher level strategy stuff, and then get down into the more the nitty gritties. But yeah, I think that's everything. So I'll stop there. And if folks also have questions about like, well, just survey design in general, and if like, why would you think about doing it this way? I'm happy to answer to the best I can.
That's great. Thank you so much. I think the survey, I have no notes personally, but I'll open it up to the room. People have questions, comments. And Fosca, you're monitoring online if someone raises their hand or something. Okay, cool.
And thank you for scrolling along with me. Appreciate it.
So which questions were you specifically interested in having feedback on? Were there, or did you say like the first couple?
I would say, in general, like if the learning, I would say the 2 big learning objectives are like, what are the barriers and what would make things feel more exciting for folks? Like if there's specific stuff. that was what I was speculating. And so I think part of my question is like, is that right? Does that feel about right? Is that kind of what we want to learn from this? Is there something else we want to use the survey to learn? And then the second question would be like, do these questions help answer that learning or help us get to that learning objective, if that makes sense? Like would these specific questions be able to help us actually understand the barriers or understand what people find exciting? Or is there other questions we want to add? Because I brainstormed a bunch of questions, not all of them made it in there, I cut some, but maybe there's, some that would want to be added. Yeah.
I mean, without any data, I have a hunch that the main barrier is people don't know what an NPA is. I've been to 3 NPA meetings and I can't explain what they are or why you should come to one. And I think that, having conversations with people and bringing them into the NPAs would change it. I think I love the energy and like trying to put together like a survey, but I think some of the questions and some of the answers are a bit long or a bit wordy. I've put surveys together before for like students at UVM, which make up the majority of our ward, and making it as quick of a read as possible has been like key to our success in getting them to fill it out. So even stuff that's like what best describes you, putting I am a student instead of just student. I think it says I am a student living on or off campus. I would just put student, or on the one that's like on a scale from 1 to 10, how excited are you? I would make that 1 to 5 and make sure that there is actually a neutral option there where we indicate that it's like, I just don't know what an NPA is. I don't care either way.
And this will be paired with like a mailer that has like a little descriptor.
Yeah.
So hopefully they read that.
Something I appreciate about surveys is when they say this is a 5-minute survey.
Yeah.
So maybe something at the top that's like, this takes however long to complete.
Sure.
Because if I hop into one, it's 30 minutes. There's no way I'm doing that. And not that this is 30 minutes, but
I would say right now, for me, I think it's a little long.
Okay.
I think filling out surveys can be time consuming and it depends what demographic you're looking for. I think students don't want to fill out surveys, but they would if it wasn't super long. And long-term residents with the QR code, and I think it's a good idea. It just needs to be worked on a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe finding a way to structure it with fewer questions or making them open-ended so that long-term residents that really do care about it can provide a lot of details, like as much as they want, and newer folks to provide as little as they want, which is like more.
I think another option there is playing with what's optional versus required, right? So having it so that the really fast ones, which I think the other thing too is like walking through this the way I just did, I took a very long time. So that's probably skewing the sense of it. I think the other aspect is when you're having a reward for it too, it gives you a little bit more room to ask more questions. But most of the questions are something that you just like do a quick tap, and we could make the ones that are writing in optional. So then it's a choose if you would choose to like to elaborate more, totally can, but that you really only have to answer the ones that are very drop down, kind of multiple choice.
Even that, when I have Google Forms or something, I'll scroll through it to see how long it is without checking to see what is required. And if there are too many questions, even if they're not required, it can turn me off a bit. Or if like some of the questions have like 2 paragraphs connected to them, that could make me like less interested in completing it.
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Great. Any other comments, questions? We can collaborate on this and get it out. I don't know, definitely before the next meeting. I don't know, within the next 2 weeks, I suppose. We'll circle up and get this in the mail.
I think it would be, folks should be mindful of when the students get out. If you are trying to mail it out to the whole board. When do we get off campus? May 10th.
Not this Saturday, but Not next Saturday, the Saturday after next Saturday.
Okay.
People are like kicked out of dorms, I think.
Gotcha. That timeline's a little tricky.
Yeah.
And then probably a lot of people won't be here in summer, right?
Right. Yeah.
So maybe for some people, it makes more sense to start the semester out in the fall. Like doing outreach to students on campus eventually.
Sure. So I guess we could do two. I guess I have a couple of competing ideas in my head in that, you know, I would like to get this survey and mailer out before the end of the fiscal year so we can spend our money on something useful. I mean, I suppose we could do it in a week. I don't want to put undue pressure on anyone. But it would be good to get it indoors before people leave. But also, if it, sorry, you go.
Is there any way to pay for it now and then just like wait, have it be that it goes out in September?
That is a great question. I
Because feel
don't
like
think
it solves a
so.
lot.
Not really. I asked this question recently because I got a similar question. I don't think you can like preemptively buy something or like prepare something to use funds for this fiscal year that you're gonna use the money in the next fiscal year. So like it needs to be, yeah. Yeah.
What would be the difference between that and like if you bought it from like First Step Print Shop the day before the end of the fiscal year and they mailed it out in the new fiscal year? Like, where do we really draw that line? Seems like if you told first, what?
Like executing the contract and putting the sale through.
Okay.
What if we send, like, we did half and half? We did like in the fall, we spent our money to send it specifically to the people in dorms. And then now we would spend it on long-term residents and then college students that stay in the ward over grade.
Is it easy enough to target those permanent addresses or? I'm not familiar with the process, so
Is the process just looking at the voter roll? Is that how the mailers are going out?
I'm pretty sure the post office can target by ward. I don't know if they can target by perm. But again, I'm speaking very anecdotally.
I think
I could.
already registered voters are much higher density. Like people did vote in last election. I don't think they come to the NPA as much.
No, I don't think so either, but I also don't want to exclude them from the process.
But if
All I know is that while I was a UVM student, we had a different zip code. So that might be an easy way to like filter through. Like UVM has a separate zip code from like on campus, at least, from other parts of Burlington. So potentially that could be a way to filter out some of those addresses. That's just a thought that came to mind.
I think the problem with doing registered voters is that if our goal is to get these out now, our goal is to get these out by the end of June. If we're not going to do them on campus, we don't have to worry about when the students move out. The off-campus people will also have moved out, and there will have been turnover. Like move out day is around a little bit after finals week in May. So the timeline is, if we want to do registered voters, the timeline's still relatively the same. There will still be a bunch of turnover,
So shoot for after June 1st.
or just don't do registered voters. I'd look into the post office option, doing, like you said, only 01 zip codes and that are in Ward 8.
That sounds good to me. Good, and we good with that? Cool. That's the last item on our agenda. Any more comments?
Is the goal to, sorry, just to clarify, is the goal to get the survey complete and the mailer printed and complete to start sending out in the next week?
Yeah, I guess, yes. Which is, again, not.
Theoretically, if you had a QR code or a link to a Google form or something else, like Google form, for example, you can continuously edit that. So we can send the link and QR code to the print shop. They will start printing it. They'll tell us when it gets sent out. And you have an extra time between when we send them the file and when it's actually sent out to edit and nitpick the form.
I believe so. As long as we'll just have to make sure that one, if people want to go forward with Google Forms versus Typeform, I think Typeform has some of the more nice stuff on it that tells you like how long the survey is, or I have to look back at what Typeform has now. But anyways, we should make sure that it's like someone on steering committee who like owns the form and the results,
Sure.
not on
Yeah.
my personal account, because that might change the URL.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess in terms of survey stuff, I threw a lot of stuff out there, but sleep on it. And if there's things that come to mind, for example, one of the questions I had in my head was like, you could ask more information around specifically like race, ethnicity kind of stuff if we wanted to make sure like if you want to make sure that the NPA is being inclusive to everyone and seeing if those responses are different. If, for example, you're not white or maybe if you're a new American or something like that, like, does that feel especially like big barriers to get here maybe? And then maybe that's something that would tell us something. So that's not a question I put in there, but that could be added. For example, it's a question that could be added or changed. So yeah, so feel free to sleep on it. And if there's questions you're like, this feels not important, or you're curious about something, definitely reach out to steering committee. My offering is out there and you can chop and do whatever to it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really quick, and not that we need to prolong this meeting too much more, but thoughts and feelings on setting up like a Ward 8 NPA at Gmail address that I guess the three of us would have access to. I know other MPAs have done that in the past, and enough turnover has happened and passwords get lost. And so I think it might work for the temporary situation.
The other wards that I've reached out to for presentations use like Google Groups, and that might be something, I don't know exactly how they work, but that might be something that you can like add emails to as opposed to one account that you all sign into.
That might be the way to do it. Cool.
We don't have our own website, right? Like other wards have their own website.
I think there's one ward that does, because I was looking.
Wards 2 and 3 probably.
Yeah, 2 and 3, they have their own website. Stuff still gets posted to the civic clerk, but they have their own like mini website, which I think is just like on Wix or something. But you can make mini websites free, I believe, on Google as well. So that Google account could also own a mini website about Ward 8 if that was desired.
And we have no form of social media.
Not yet.
I feel like if we do want to target students, that would be something that would have to be considered.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would Burlington, like the official city email domain, be impractical for the ward?
I suppose not.
I don't know that you guys would be able to do that because you're not like formally elected officials. So I don't know that you could get an email within that domain. But I don't know the specifics. I did just want to mention, you talked about inclusivity, and I think like the turnaround is kind of soon for this, but I think in the future, like thinking about if you want to reach out to groups like New Americans, like interpretation of materials and surveys. And so, yeah, just thinking about that, that's also another way you could use your funds in the future.
Yeah, we should consider some kind of translation for the NPA. I mean, if we just take a look at what the other like most used common languages are in the ward, I think that should be considered. It doesn't have to be the most important thing, but just consider it.
Absolutely.
It might also be worth reworking the landing page for Ward 8 on the city's page, because it's a little bit more bare bones than some of the other wards and it has a little bit less information. So I think that can be padded out. And once you get like a social media or whatever, because it's really easy to Google Burlington Ward 8 and that comes up. So if you can pad that out. And I don't know, is that through CEDO?
Yeah, I make the changes on that website. Yeah. So
Like
if you guys have a website you create or social media, let me know. I can add it.
Sure.
Yeah, we could.
And to get on the newsletter, which I feel like people's data is gold. You want that. Because it's one thing for people to look up, oh, when's my Ward 8 meeting? It's another thing for you to email them and be like, nudge, nudge. It's coming up this week.
The website doesn't say the time.
Yeah.
I had a tough time with that.
Noted.
Yeah.
I had to email you. That's
Yeah.
how we got married.
Well, okay, so to clarify, I think that that's the case across a lot of wards in terms of it's linking out to Civic Clerk, which is not the best UX experience of like, now you got to wait for that to load. Now you have to be like, click in it. It's kind of overwhelming, which all speaks to why there might be a benefit of having our own little mini site that steering committee can more quickly update. And you could even have your social media feed go into it, all of that stuff, and not have to like put more on CEDO or have to like have timelines to coordinate with CEDO. You can just kind of own it amongst the group, make fast updates.
Cool. Great. Well, good. All right. Thank you very much. And we'll see you all on May 23rd at 6:30 p.m.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.